Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am 7Drosa6, and I am the DM for 7th Roll. And this is a little bit of an update video, as you might have assumed from the title. And the reason for that is there's a couple of things I want to talk about on the channel and on the podcast version of this, because that's something that I want to start with. There might be people who don't know, so I figured I'd mention it here, but there is a YouTube version of this, and there is a podcast version of this. YouTube version has images, has a battle grid and all that, if you're interested in that. The podcast is just sound, as you might have surmised from that. I don't really care which of the two you listen to, honestly. I just figured if you're more interested in the other medium, I figured I'd mention it again here so that you know. I'll leave a link to the respective ones in the description in case you are interested. However, that's not really what I wanted to talk about. What I did want to talk about is, first of all, you might have already realized this if you are listening to the podcast or watching the videos, but we recently started a new one-shot called A Village in Howls. It's currently our 4th one-shot, although technically The King's Spy was like more of a 2-shot than a 1-shot. Our 4th story, let's call it that. And we started uploading it last Sunday, but seeing as this update video is going to be published on a Thursday, one of the things that you might have been wondering is like, well, you know, there's no new episode this Thursday. Usually, you know, we upload Thursday, Sunday. Why is that? And there's a couple of reasons for that. The biggest one is just A Village in Howls was recorded very close to the moment it was going to start being uploaded, and it was the first of 2 one-shots that we would have had to do. So I kind of made the decision to not upload 2 one-shots at the same time for the foreseeable future, at least for the time period of A Village in Howls, possibly longer than that. Because I started noticing that honestly it takes a lot of work to get that set up. I also have people that, you know, have lives of their own. It's not because I have the time to record all of these that other people do. I need to make sure that my players are capable of playing. We're not doing this professionally, we're mostly doing this for fun. So because of that, you know, I've decided, look, let's for the time being at least switch to 1 episode a week, one shot running. If at some point we get the time to do like 2, then we'll probably switch to that, but hey. With that in mind, however, one of the things that of course happens with us now switching to one shot is there's a little bit of a hole that's gonna come up, and I think this is mostly going to be important for the YouTube people. This is mostly going to be important for the Village in Howls people, the Village in Howls people, the podcast people. You guys are going to get a little bit of a hole, meaning that you're going to get a weekly episode rather than 2 weekly episodes. So this is actually where we get to the second big update, which is I wanted to keep the channel mostly around tabletop RPGs. At this current point in time, it's been Dungeons and Dragons. There are plans to, at some point, do some other systems. I'm not going to necessarily talk about those yet because I kind of still have to figure that out. But at this current point in time, we are planning some other tabletop RPGs, but I want to keep the channel in that direction mostly. At this current point in time, at least. However, I did feel like I required some fill-up content, I guess you could say, for the YouTube version, at least. Because, you know, the more you upload on YouTube, the more exposure you get. And I started thinking about it, and one of the things that I figured I could do was I could go back to my olden days and do some Let's Plays. Thing is, of course, you know, how do you tie that into the tabletop RPG scene? And the answer to that actually came in a game that I had forgotten that I had, which was, that I had forgotten that I wanted to get, which was Pathfinder Kingmaker. So about a month ago, somewhere in August, I don't know the exact date, the makers of Pathfinder Kingmaker actually released a turn-based mode for the game. And because of that, we now have an actual video gaming experience of Pathfinder. And I figured, seeing as Pathfinder is a system that I am not all that familiar with, however, it is a system I actually started with. My very first, I want to say 3 sessions or something, were actually Pathfinder First Edition. So I don't have a lot of experience with the system, but I do know the system. So I figured, let's go back to those days. And I decided to make a Pathfinder Kingmaker Let's Play. By the time this video goes out to everybody, the first episode of Kingmaker should also be online, which is going to be prologue and character creation. One thing, however, that you might notice if you are on the podcast version is that Pathfinder Kingmaker is not going to be uploaded to the podcast. And the reason for that is honestly just I think that video games don't translate well to podcasts. So I decided let's not fill up the podcast with content that honestly I don't think belongs there. Let's not fill up the let's just not fill it up with content that you guys are honestly not going to get much out of. So Pathfinder Kingmaker is going to be exclusive to YouTube. This is not a way for me guys to be like, subscribe to YouTube. No, it's just honestly because I personally think that, you're not going to get much out of a Kingmaker playthrough on the podcast. So I don't want to bore you guys with that. So if you're interested, you can always go to YouTube and check it out there. But if you're not, hey, don't worry about it. The second reason that I'm also mentioning this is for the people that know this. Larian is also going to be releasing their early access of Baldur's Gate. It should be the 30th of September. And I also actually do want to have a look at that. So I am also very likely going to make some Baldur's Gate content on the YouTube channel. Again, same reason that I'm not going to be uploading Pathfinder Kingmaker to the podcast is the same reason that I'm not going to be uploading anything for Baldur's Gate on the podcast. So just so you guys know, that is the current and future plans. So why did I start Kingmaker if I'm going to start Baldur's Gate? Because I don't know if Baldur's Gate is actually going to be out the 30th. And I figured I'd like to have some content between now and then. We'll see how we divide that once we get there. Probably going to prioritize Baldur's Gate over Kingmaker for a little bit, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop playing Kingmaker. Because I'm actually enjoying it. I do want to say this also. I am going to prioritize the one-shots. This is still a tabletop RPG channel, or this is still supposed to be a tabletop RPG channel. I do want to prioritize the one-shots and the stories and stuff like that. So, all right, final update, because this is already going too long. Final update that I want to make, the third point that I wanted to talk about, is some of you might have already heard about this, but we have 250 plus downloads on The King's Feast. And for those of you who don't know what I mean with that, when The King's Feast was finished, a little bit after that, we actually published an adventure on DM's Guild called The King's Feast, which is literally the YouTube and podcast versions of that adventure ported into a small adventure book. So I think about 20 pages. It has the creatures that I used. It has stat blocks for the most important characters, stuff like that. And it has a little bit of my thought process. It has a couple of things that I would change if I had to rerun it. Some tips and tricks to run. I have no idea what came out of my mouth there. Some tips and tricks if you want to run it. Just a basic little adventure. And we currently have about 250 downloads on it. It is pay what you want. I'm not expecting you guys to put any money on it. Honestly, I'm already happy that I had 250 downloads. that actually already makes me very happy. However, there might be some people wondering whether or not we're going to be doing the same for other one-shots. Answer to that is yes. I am currently working on the King's Spy, specifically, to get that one uploaded. And afterwards, I'm probably also going to start work on A Village in Howls once the King's Spy is ready, or at least once we're starting to proofread it and stuff like that. I'm planning on getting those two uploaded as well, and I will try to get updates out to you guys once I do. For the people, because this is maybe a question that of course pops up, then some people might be wondering, well, what about the Frozen Palace? Because that was the one shot we did as well. Is there going to be an adventure for that one as well? The answer at this current point in time is no. And there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, time. You know, I do want to be able to get these adventures out, and it does take some time. It does take some proofreading, you know, stuff like that. I am doing all of this in my spare time, so you know. But the second and bigger reason, which I'm gonna try to do this without spoilers. I think I can, I'm not sure. But with the way that the one-shot went, I'm not 100% sure yet if and how I want to continue the story of the Frozen Palace. I know that there should be a follow-up to it, I'm pretty sure. I'm just not sure how I'm going to do it yet, and if I'm going to do it. And the problem with the Frozen Palace is that I feel if I'm going to make an adventure out of it, if I'm actually going to write down everything that I had for the Frozen Palace, I'm going to end up with spoilers towards the next leg of that story, or there's going to be information known both to you and my players that they shouldn't know yet. And I feel like it's always easier to not metagame if you can't metagame. If you can metagame, you're gonna try not to, but there's always this like subconscious thing of like, can I? Maybe? Little? And I want to try to limit that as much as possible. So until I am sure of how I want to do the follow-up to the Frozen Palace, I am very likely not going to release the adventure. Or at least I'm not going to make the adventure. I still have all my notes for it. I still know how it worked. I still have the Fantasy Grounds campaign set up, so I can still do it later on. But yeah, you're going to have to wait for that one, possibly a very long time. So don't get your hopes up for it, at least not yet. So, with all of that in mind, I am going to leave this video off here. I hope that Seventh Row can at least be a little bit of an inspiration to some of you. I hope that you will keep enjoying our one-shots. I feel like the quality of A Village in Howls is, again, higher than what the first one-shots were. I've started, you know, working a little bit on my audio editing skills mostly. I hope it's getting better. I think it's getting better. From what I hear, it's better. Yeah, I hope you guys will enjoy. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, this has been Sevendros6 of 7th Roll. Until next time.